Thunderbolts. This will be a spoiler review. If you want to see my non-spoiler review, you can read that on soundedbettermyhead.com. I end up giving this, I end up going with a 3 out of 5. I kind of flirted with going a little bit higher, like a 3.5. I like to do my non-spoiler reviews first, and then I'll go look at other people's reviews. I want to see maybe I missed something, maybe I didn't read something the right way in the film, maybe I didn't think about something or catch something that I could have enjoyed the film more. So before I do my spoiler review, I do kind of like to see, did I miss something? So it seems like there's a lot of people that are really, really liking this movie, and I'm like, well, did I miss something? Because I didn't love it. But no, I'm sticking with the 3. I try not to hold the marketing against the film. I've talked about this in other reviews. Like, sometimes the trailers ruin stuff, and it's not the filmmaker's fault, because they make the movie and it's the marketing team putting stuff out there, and they spoil stuff that, the stuff like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have known that going in. And, maybe it's my fault for watching the marketing, but you also try to convince me to see these movies, so it's a little bit of a dance there. It's like, I'm kind of feel like I'm deducting points from the movie just because of the marketing. And again, I hate to do that, but it just, my movie going experience was kind of like lessened because of some of this stuff. And I'll probably get to most of it or all of it in this review. Depends how much I get lost in my own thoughts here. The trailers, like I said, you get the very basic plot from the trailers. Like, I watched the trailers, I got a rough idea how the movie was going to go in my head, and then I saw the movie, and a lot of it's like, okay, I expected that. Some stuff's in different parts than I expected it to be. There's a little bit different flow. There's a couple surprises, but for the most part, like, yeah, that's basically the movie I thought I was getting. I thought the action scenes, they were fine enough, but when you look back, it's like nothing really stood out being that great. I wasn't like, well, that was a pretty memorable action sequence. The only one that really kind of stood out, and just because it was slightly different, was that late in the film when they're trying to take on the Sentry, and he's just basically like Superman going against a bunch of scrubs instead of like the Justice League, as we've seen in the Justice League movie, where like there he's holding up Aquaman and Wonder Woman and Flash, and here it's Superman holding up some relatively normal people, and it's just, there's ants to him basically, and just the way some of the stuff was pretty cool, the way they did it. A little CGI heavy, but it's fine. But like I said, other than that, most of the action's just kind of like, yeah, and a lot of it ended kind of quickly. As far as the opening sequence, even there's like the big roof jump. Like, the actress Florence Pugh actually jumped off the roof of this building. Granted, she had ropes and wires, so she wasn't really in any real danger. But it's barely anything. Like, she drops off the building, she goes like a couple feet, and then they cut to like a stunt woman doing like the parachute portion of the stunt. So it's like, it's such a small thing that they made it kind of a big deal about. I wish she would have fallen a little bit farther and then cut to the parachute. If you're gonna make a big deal about the actress doing this stunt for real. And even that little fight scene in the hallway was okay. It wasn't much different than we've seen than any other Black Widow going down a hallway, except that it was shot from overhead. Maybe that was the point, that she's done all this before, like again and again and again. It's just boring to her now. I was a little surprised that quickly in the movie that they revealed that DeFontaine is basically the villain. I was kind of surprised that she's basically this plot was that she had her back up against the wall, and she's trying to get rid of all these loose ends, which ends up including the superheroes in the movie. So that was kind of shocking. I don't know that we necessarily needed her assistant, Mel. I mean, yeah, in the end, she was helpful with getting Bucky on board, but Bucky where he needed to be, but it was so subtle that it's like, you know what, you probably could have done without her. She really didn't add that much to the movie. Not that I hated the character, I was like, she needs to go, but and another character that didn't need to be in the movie at all was Taskmaster. Like, everybody I know that's seen the trailers, everyone pretty much pointed out, I was like, wait, she's basically in like just some scenes in the beginning, and she does pop up a couple of shots in the early trailers, but then the later trailers she's not even in there. So it seemed pretty clear that she doesn't survive very long in the movie, which she doesn't. And there's just no reason for her to be there. It wasn't like her death was some kind of catalyst for anything. It wasn't like the characters had this big regret about her dying. Even the one that killed her, there was only one little brief scene talking about it. So her death meant absolutely nothing to the movie. Like, didn't matter that she lived or died. It had no effect on the movie or any of the characters. It wasn't like she sacrificed herself. It wasn't like, I think at one point they did talk about doing it later in the movie. I was like, well, see, then it might have meant something. There was no reason at all to have her that I know of. I don't know what that. The only thing it might have did was make it feel like, okay, these characters can die. But the fact that they already announced most of these characters were going to be in the next Avengers film took all the tension out of that scene. The fight the Sentry he's got is like, all right, well, they're not going to die because they already announced her in the next movie. And again, this is the marketing team ruining something. I don't know if I would have thought watching the movie, well, they killed Taskmaster in the beginning, so maybe these guys don't survive this fight. I don't know. They took that illusion away from me. Other than that, like, you just get into the banter. Sometimes it's a little too much humor, like they overdo it kind of quite a bit. Especially when Red Guardian shows up, that's his whole thing. He's just kind of over the top. It works for his character, but everybody's kind of snarky and making jokes, so sometimes it's a little too much. The movie's got a lot of similarities tonally to Guardians of the Galaxy, especially the first one. Band of misfits come together, but they got to start out fighting each other, then they got to work together, then they learn to be like friends and a team, and there's like, the same kind of humor going on. There's heart to it. I mean, there's everything with Yelena and her her backstory and what happened with her, and especially with Florence Pugh's acting. Like, that's what really carries the movie to me. Like, her characterization, and you get some of that with Red Guardian too, kind of backing her up, and because he's part of her origin story. So that stuff, especially the scene late in the movie where he gives her the pep talk, that really cements it. Like, all right, I really care about this character, and through her, the whole rest of the team. Even though Ghost got not much to do, like, she gets some action stuff to do, but backstory-wise or fleshing her out, she really doesn't get much of anything. So I think that was kind of a disappointment. They had some missed opportunities with her to kind of bring her up with like the rest of the team, where like, okay, I care about all these characters, and like some of them have more backstory stuff too. Like, I watched all Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so I know more about John Walker's origin, because he was in a lot of episodes of that show where Ghost was only in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and they bring her back. She doesn't do much else here. Besides just the kind of banter and a little bit of action, like, you don't flesh her out. They kind of blew an opportunity late, and I wouldn't be surprised if this stuff was either in the script or maybe in deleted scenes. Yelena goes into the void. She has to relive some trauma, and then the rest of the team joins her, and then they just show up at the end. I feel like there was a version where we got to see them dealing with their trauma, and that, I think, would have helped flesh out, Ghost especially. John Walker, they did show a little scene with him, but maybe we see a little bit more. We definitely could have did Red Guardian, because we haven't seen any super specific trauma with him like that. I think that would have helped add a little something. And you don't even need to do Bucky. Bucky's got so much shit in his past. That'd be cool with him just having that line like, "Hey, it was easy for me. I don't got no trauma," like the joke that he made. And then another thing, they kind of killed a lot of the tension, because it looks like at first like, oh my god, he just killed this little girl, now he's killing all these civilians. Then it's like the whole city of New York, and Yelena goes in there. It's like, okay, obviously these people aren't dead, and they're all going to come back. So I think that kills some tension. And also, the movie ends with this big group hug, like literally, like it's basically the ending to, spoiler for that movie, but Inside Out 2. It's like, we all give you a big hug, and that saves the day, which is fine. I kind of like, it's a different way of beating the villain, but I wish there would have been like even a ticking clock. Like, maybe we don't stop them stealing. These people are gone forever. Like, we gotta do it. We gotta stop them now, or otherwise, it's the end of the world or whatever. Just to kind of put a little more tension. Then I think it works a little better. Even though it's just the hugging ending, I think that still works. There's probably other stuff I could be talking about in this movie. I don't want to go through every spoiler. I don't want to go through everything about it. I'm just trying to get some stuff out there that I didn't want to really get into the non-spoiler review. Another big thing, I think everybody kind of assumed that since it was Thunderbolts asterisk, the team would somehow have to be like either the New Avengers, or a lot of people were thinking the Dark Avengers. Everyone kept saying they were going to be the Dark Avengers. I didn't see a version where the team runs out calling themselves the Dark Avengers. It does make sense what they actually do in the film. At the end, they call them the New Avengers. And it's an odd choice, because at the end, they do become heroes, but it doesn't feel like this is your Avengers team going forward. But I think you could work with that. You know, depending how they do it. It still kind of felt like it was temporary. I would not be surprised if next time we see these guys are done being Avengers. Asterisk on that here in a second. Then you go into post-credit scenes. The mid-credit scene was just a joke, which was fine. And then the final post-credit scene, we see that it's a little over a year later. They still are the Avengers, or the new Avengers, but they are being sued by the new Captain America. He's saying, you know, basically it's a copyright thing and they can't be the Avengers. So they are still doing it and they still want to do it. Sentry's still got no powers. And then it rolls into, you know, a tease where something shows up in space. It's a Fantastic Four ship, which is cool. Like, just from the trailers, you could say, oh, my, hey, it's a Fantastic Four ship. And then they do kind of hit you over the head with it, and it rolls over. It's got the Fantastic Four logo on it. I had the scene slightly spoiled for me ahead of time, which honestly didn't take much impact out of it. Like, I knew something about the Fantastic Four was probably in it. Somebody accidentally slipped and told me that. I don't think it ruined the surprise. I think it was a fine either way. It wasn't that big enough a surprise, but oh my god. I did get that old school feel though, that, you know, it just feels like, you know, we're taking these characters, kind of seeing where they might go, but it's also, not only is it setting up the Fantastic Four, but it's also getting you hyped for Avengers Doomsday. So I think that reminds me of the old school Marvel post-credit scenes where it's really kind of pushing you in that next direction. Like, you enjoy this movie? Well, check out this one, and then check out this one. But what I read was that post-credit scene was filmed by the Russos on the set of Doomsday, and in fact, it is, when they filmed it, it was supposed to be a scene for Avengers Doomsday. So either A, we're going to see that again in the movie, either exactly the same or slightly tweaked, and you're like, oh, I already saw this. Or they're like, you know what, this scene's not that necessary for the movie, so since we've already kind of shown it here, we're just going to cut it out, and maybe some very tiny hint of it's still in there, which I'd be cool with that. I think I prefer that version. I think that's gonna be it though. I don't want to go too nuts on. I'm sure I could probably talk about like bits and pieces of this movie forever, but then the video will be like way too long. So anyways, like I said, I do have the spoiler-free version of this review. It might be a little bit more coherent and a little bit more linear. I have other reviews for movies, TV shows, a couple video games. I got my comic strips, all that stuff's at soundedbetterinmyhead.com. So if you want to check that out, that's cool. Other than that, thanks for watching.